Hello friends, and welcome back to Breaking Bread for You with the fourth video in a series on the difficult stories in the Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible, or the Old Testament. The story of Ham's transgression against his father Noah and the subsequent curse spoken over his grandson Canaan, recorded in Genesis 9, contains one of the most mysterious and potentially appalling episodes in the Bible, really dealt with in Bible studies. For the closer the story is examined, the more disgusting it becomes. The most asked question concerning this episode in the life of Noah is, what exactly did Ham do to his father that made him so angry that he would speak a curse over his grandson Canaan? With the second most asked question being, why did Noah speak a curse over Ham's son and not Ham himself? So let's take a look at the text and the theories out there on this infamous episode, and then you can decide the most probable answers to these questions for yourselves. Now, the time frame of Genesis 9 appears to have been just after Noah and his family disembarked from the ark, over a year after the deluge began. Yet there might have been a great deal of time between the landing in chapter 8 and the next event in chapter 9, wherein God blesses Noah and his sons and instructs them to be fruitful and to multiply. It was at that time and place that Yehovah gave Noah and his sons dominion over every animal to be used for meat, while commanding them to not ingest animals' blood. Verse 4, forbidding them to take the life of human beings, verses 5 and 6, and then again commanding them to be fruitful and to multiply and to populate the whole world, verse 7. Further, Yehovah establishes his covenant with Noah, promising to never destroy the earth again with flooding, verse 11, with the token of that promise being his rainbow, verse 13. So let's begin to read the text to see if we can answer the questions of what did Ham do to Noah that evoked such anger, and why did Noah speak a curse over Canaan? Beginning in verse 18 of chapter 9, it reads, Now the sons of Noah who went out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and Ham was the father of Canaan. These three were the sons of Noah, and from these the whole earth was populated. And Noah began to be a farmer, and he planted a vineyard. Then he drank of the wine and was drunk and became uncovered in his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brothers outside. But Shem and Japheth took a garment, laid it on both their shoulders, and went backward and covered the nakedness of their father. Their faces were turned away, and they did not see their father's nakedness. So Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his younger son had done to him. And Noah said, Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants he shall be to his brethren. And he said, Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, and may Canaan be his servant. May God enlarge Japheth, and may he dwell in the tents of Shem, and may Canaan be his servant. And Noah lived after the flood 350 years. So all the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. As you might have noticed, this passage is full of difficulties, which has led some scholars to speculate that it had been edited in order to sanitize the account of its heinousness, thus making the story more palatable to readers. However, in order to find some application of the story to our lives, we need to discover the real story behind the redaction, if that is at all possible, and I think that it is. Now, the first difficulty for me is found at the very beginning of Noah's story in Genesis 6, and it is said of him, and I quote, But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Noah was a just man and perfect in his generations, and Noah walked with God, verses 8 and 9. Yet in chapter 9 we are told that Noah gets drunk, is uncovered in his tent, and passes out, which appears to be out of character for this patriarch. Yet I have to ask in defense of Noah, since there is no previous mention of wine or getting drunk from it in Genesis, could it be the case that Noah's inebriation was accidental, perhaps having ingested grape juice that had unknowingly become fermented, which caused him to behave inappropriately? Whatever the case, another difficulty is found in verse 18, wherein Noah's sons are listed as Japheth, Shem, and Ham, to which is oddly added the name of Ham's fourth son, Canaan. Up to this point, there had been no mention of Noah having grandchildren at the time of the flood or thereafter. If Canaan, as well as his brothers Sidon, Cush, and Mitzrayim, existed at the time of Ham's transgression, this indicates that there is a time gap between verse 18, when the eight had vacated the ark, to the time of Ham's transgression in verse 22. Since Noah knows Ham's son's name, we have to wonder if he is referring to a child yet to be born, whose name was added to the passage by an editor at a later time. We have to remember that much of Genesis was written long after the events took place, with manuscripts having undergone editing for various reasons, which accounts for difficulties in some of the accounts. Two other difficulties concern Noah's wife. The first being that she is not named, and the second is that she appears to have been absent during the incident. Now, to answer the first query, I have to say that it is not uncommon in the Bible that tragic females are left unnamed, as in the case of Lot's wife, Jephthah's daughter, and the Levite's concubine. If Noah's wife was thought to be a tragic figure and therefore left unnamed, this could indicate the nature of Ham's transgression, so keep this one in mind. In regard to where she was during the incident, I have to say that it is doubtful that she would have been lying next to Noah through all of the commotion, unless she had been part of it. Some argue that Noah's wife was present through it all based on the statement, and I quote, "And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father," which is an idiom found elsewhere in the Torah, referring to a man's wife being sexually violated by another. Now, given the biblical premise that to become one in marriage, the wife would be included in the nakedness of the father. Quoting from Leviticus 18:8, it reads, "You shall not uncover the nakedness of your father, which is the nakedness of your mother. She is your mother. You shall not uncover her nakedness. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your father's wife. It is the nakedness of your father." Elsewhere in Leviticus 20:11, it reads, "If a man lies with his father's wife, it is the nakedness of his father that he has uncovered." And in verse 17 of that chapter, it reads, "If a man has sexual intercourse with his sister, whether the daughter of his father or his mother, so that he sees her nakedness and she sees his nakedness, it is a disgrace. They must be cut off in the sight of the children of their people. He has exposed his sister's nakedness. He will bear his punishment for iniquity." And again in Deuteronomy 27:20 it reads, "Cursed be he who lies with his father's wife, for he has revealed what his father has covered." And may I say, all of these have to do with sexual intercourse. Based on this, Ham seeing the nakedness of Noah could point to maternal incest. Otherwise, the idiom would refer to Noah himself being the victim of incest. This theory is ancient, having been proposed by medieval rabbis, which have been cited by Rashi. If you have noticed, it says that Noah became uncovered. Right afterwards, it says that Ham saw the nakedness of his father, which could mean that it was Ham who uncovered his father. In the case of Ham sodomizing his father, assuredly Noah's wife would have been absent from the tent, and for all we know, she could have been deceased. Another reason not to mention her name. Now, if you have run across her name being Naamah, it was a medieval midrashic writer who assigned that name to her, believing her to have been the Naamah, the daughter of Lamech and Zillah, Genesis 4:22. Now, if Noah's wife had been the one violated, this might well answer the most often asked question, why was Canaan cursed and not Ham? And that answer could be that the incestuous rape resulted in Canaan's conception, whose illegitimacy would have resulted in him being branded a mamzer, bastard in Hebrew, who in the culture of the Old Testament would have been considered a curse. If in fact Ham raped his mother and she became pregnant with Canaan, Noah would not have had to curse Canaan, but would have merely stated a fact that Canaan was already cursed. Deuteronomy tells us, "A bastard shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord. Even to his 10th generation shall he not enter into the congregation of the Lord," which indicates how serious illegitimacy it was thought of at that time in the law. Of course, this scenario would suppose that Canaan had not been born at the time of Ham's transgression, and that naming him in the passage is an anachronism, a writer naming something out of time and place. Now, in examining the grammar of verse 25, where it is mostly translated, "Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants, shall be unto his brethren." Now, cursed be Canaan in the Hebrew is arur Canaan. Arur, a participle, a verb that functions like an adjective, as in the case of finished product. Although translators have placed the word be after curse, I rather go with the Owen's analytical key to the Old Testament, wherein it is simply translated in the passive form, "cursed Canaan," and that he is already cursed. In my estimation, Noah did not place a curse of servitude to his uncles Shem and Japheth on Canaan, but merely stated the fact that he was cursed by being conceived through incestuous rape. I take it in what follows is Noah prophesying over Canaan that he will be a servant to Shem and Japheth. Another theory that was proposed by medieval rabbis and has remained popular today is that Ham castrated his father, perhaps in order to usurp Noah's position as tribal chief and priest of his clan, although there is little evidence of that in the text, with the only possible exception being that Ham went and told his brothers what he had done, perhaps announcing his assent. Based on it being said that Noah woke and knew what had been done to him, validates this theory. If this was the intent of Ham, since Noah would then be unable to father a fourth son, he spoke the curse of servitude over Ham's fourth son, Canaan. But this assumes that Noah was vindictive, which seems out of character for him. Then again, the apparent degree of anger with which Noah awoke indicates that Ham had done something quite heinous to him, as would be the case with castration. Otherwise, we have to ask, why would Canaan admit to his brothers that he saw his father drunk and naked, with perhaps the only other answer being that he was drunk as well. And we know the foolish and senseless things people do while drunk. Now, before we move on, let me say here that usurping leadership positions is a theme that runs through the Hebrew Bible, beginning with Lucifer attempting to usurp God's authority and rule, Isaiah 12:14 and 15. Three other notable cases was when Reuben took his father's concubine, David's son Absalom took his father's concubines, and Solomon's brother asked for David's last concubine, Abishag. All attempts to usurp leadership roles. Voyeurism has also been considered to be Ham's transgression, which takes seeing his father's nakedness literally. Commentators who support this position point out the seriousness of disrespecting parents in that way in the ancient Near East, as assumed in the fifth commandment, and I quote, "Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee." Now, although the fifth commandment was established centuries after this story took place, if it was a matter of Ham disrespecting his father by staring at him naked, the judgment should have fallen on him and not his youngest son. Found in a Pesha on this story in the Dead Sea Scrolls, 2Q 252, it is said that because God blessed Noah and his sons, the blessing could not be revoked from Ham, so the punishment had to pass on to a son. Yet in the case of Reuben, although he had been blessed along with his 11 brothers, he was cursed directly by his father Jacob for committing incest with his father's concubine. And I quote, "Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might and the beginning of my strength, outstanding in dignity. outstanding in power. You are destructive like water and will not excel. For you got on your father's bed, then you defiled it. He got on my couch. On a positive note, honoring one's parents can be appreciated in Shem's and Japheth's covering their father with a garment by walking backwards into his tent so as not to see what Ham had seen. Yet, the voyeurism theory begins to fall apart when Noah is said to have woken and known what his son had done to him, verse 24, which implies that something beyond passively staring at him took place, bringing us back to the theories of incestuous rape, whether maternal or paternal, and castration. Now, it has been thought over the centuries that Canaan's curse was the reason for black skin and the justification for and promotion of the enslavement of Africans, with both arguments having no biblical basis whatsoever. It has also been argued that the story functions to explain the genocide of Canaanites by the Hebrews entering the land under Joshua's leadership. Yet the scriptures indicate that the descendants of Canaanites were annihilated at the time due to their utter wickedness and their rejection of Yehovah. We know this from Rahab's testimony that the Jerichoites had heard of Yehovah and were terrified. Joshua 2:11. Now, about the curse of Canaan being fulfilled, it is evident in Israel's conquest of 7 nations, Genesis 14, with David's subjugation of the Canaanites and the Philistines, and through Japheth's descendants, the Greeks and the Romans' subjugation of the children of Canaan, the Tyrians and the Carthaginians. The descendants of Ham and the progenitors of the people of Egypt and Babylon, which although had established great empires, were eventually subjugated by Persia, Shem's descendants, and then by the Greeks and Romans, Japheth's descendants. Now, how do we apply this story to our lives? What comes to mind is that we should always honor our parents, and by doing that, we are to lead holy and just lives. Let me say that the 10 Commandments begins with 4 that commands us to respect God, while the remaining 6 command us to respect people. Further, I take it that the 5th commandment, to honor one's parents, has to do with fulfilling the following 5 commandments. For no godly parent wants their child to murder, commit adultery, rob, slander, covet, or get drunk. So if you take the 5th commandment to heart, you will keep the next 5. Now, if you don't think that we should obey the 10 commandments, think again. For Jesus taught us to abide by them in his teachings. And as some err, in no way did he nullify the 10 commandments. Yes, the commandments show us that we can't always keep them, and that we need forgiveness through a Savior. But the commandments were also established to teach us how to strive to live for a holy God. I pray that the God of creation gives you the strength to turn your backs on the temptation to break those commandments, and that in doing that you reap the blessings that the true God of creation has for those who love him by keeping his commandments. Thank you for viewing, and please subscribe for announcements of my next video on the difficult stories of the Hebrew Bible. Also, please go to Jan Curcio YouTube channel to view my collection of teachings on the Bible. God bless you all.